we're going to be talking about some playoff clinching scenarios. And this is your place to get the update on them. And of course, there's a few more than we had last week, excuse me. And so we're going to go through each and every one of them. First off, we're going to start off with the AFC, right? The Baltimore Ravens have the first playoff clinching scenario for the AFC playoff picture. And I'll put it up right here. Lot of scenarios, right? 9 of them. The Baltimore Ravens, all of them would have to include them winning. Now they are taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday Night Football. In my picks, I do believe the Ravens are going to win that one. But as you can see, a lot of things need to happen here. The Broncos need to lose to the Lions, or the Cowboys the Bills need to lose to the Cowboys. And just, I could see the Broncos losing to the Lions because I got the Lions winning over the Broncos. But a lot of things need to happen their way. It's hard to say that they're going to make the playoffs or they're at least going to clinch their spot in Week 15. But hey, man, anything can happen. I would say maybe that number 2 spot might be more probable. The Ravens winning, the Broncos losing, and the Browns losing, possibly. I don't know. Those are your playoff clinching scenarios for the Ravens. Comment down below. Do you think they make the playoffs or not? Let me know. Now let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture. We get a couple more scenarios than the 3 that we had last week. We had the Detroit Lions getting their first set of playoff clinching scenarios, and the list is long for the Detroit Lions to be able to clinch a playoff spot. I'll put it up right there. There's 16 total. And as you guys know, I'm usually the one to cut this list in half because, as you can see, 8 through 16 all require a Lions tie. Look, ties happen in the NFL, and we've seen it in the history of the NFL, but I'm just not going to bet on the fact that the Lions are going to tie with the Broncos there. It would be crazy. I will fully admit that I was wrong, and I'll eat crow if it's a tied ball game. But you take a look here, again, highly improbable. I'm looking at that first one. Lions, I got the Lions beating the Broncos, like I said. I do have the Eagles beating the Seahawks, so that's something that could work in their favor. And then you have either the Packers losing to the Buccaneers or the Vikings losing. So, things could go their way, but it all matters if they take care of business. And that's a tough game for the Detroit Lions to beat the Denver Broncos. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. The Philadelphia Eagles, for the past couple of weeks, have had a few playoff clinching scenarios that if they win, they're in. But of course, they've lost back-to-back games against the 49ers and the Cowboys. So let's take a look at their playoff clinching scenarios. Same scenario, right? We could go through each and every one of these 9 scenarios. Some of them include ties, but the simplest one is on Monday Night Football. If they win, they're in, they clinch a spot, and right there with the 49ers, they would be the second team in the NFC to clinch that playoff spot. Now, for the Eagles, they play Monday night. So a lot of these scenarios would actually work their way out before they kick off the ball to start the game. So they may just, say, for example, that second scenario. So if the Packers lose and the Falcons lose and the Rams lose, I'm not saying that one's going to happen, but say if those things do happen, then they would have already known before the game even starts that they would make the playoffs. And they're still in that race for that number 1 seed, with the 49ers having the tiebreaker because the 49ers beat the Eagles. And so if they win, they're in. Pretty simple. And I do believe the Eagles bounce back against the Seahawks, even though it would benefit the Dallas Cowboys if the Eagles lost to the Seahawks. But we'll see. Geno Smith's status is still up in the air. Now let's go ahead and move to the simplest playoff clinching scenario, and that's your San Francisco 49ers. They already clinched the playoff spot last week, but this one includes clinching the division that is the NFC West, and it's fairly simple, and I'll put it up right there. If they win, they will clinch the NFC West, and they will be the division champs. And then another scenario, for whatever reason, if the 49ers lose to the Cardinals, which I don't believe will happen, if the Rams end up losing to the Commanders, which I don't believe will happen, that a Rams loss would guarantee the division title for the Rams or for the San Francisco 49ers. I believe the 49ers can take care of business here, and they get the win, and they beat the Cardinals and their division champs. But last but not least, that takes us to the Dallas Cowboys. And again, long list, as you can see, 14 scenarios on how the Dallas Cowboys can get to the playoffs and punch their ticket to the playoffs. Now, I'll just say this before we go through this. I think the Cowboys clinch a playoff spot. win or lose. If they win, obviously they're in. And spoiler alert, that's the scenario. That's the simplest scenario. If the Cowboys go to Buffalo and they beat the Bills, boom, you're in the playoffs for the third straight season. And it's as simple as that. But if they do not win, and if they lose, there are a couple scenarios that I personally see that could easily happen realistically, that would guarantee the Cowboys go into the playoffs. I believe they involve Tampa Bay losing because I think the Packers bounce back. So you'd be looking at scenarios 6 through 10. I mean, there's already 5 scenarios right there. I could see the Vikings. I got the Bengals beating the Vikings, so the Vikings would lose. And then I got the Seahawks losing to the Eagles. So if the Eagles win, it actually does work in the Cowboys' favor if the Cowboys end up losing. There's a lot of scenarios that work for the Cowboys going into Week 15, and that's why I believe, like I said, I believe the Cowboys go to the playoffs and punch their ticket to the playoffs, win or lose, no matter what happens. But a lot of playoff scenarios. Comment down below if you have any questions. I am happy to answer them. But those are officially by the NFL. Other than that, there are no other teams that can officially punch their ticket to the playoffs. There are a few teams that will be knocked out of contention, but we're just going to be talking about those playoff clinching scenarios.